Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Writers Chat. This is the place writers like to gather. We talk about all things writing by writers and for writers. So we're really glad you're with us today in the chat, or if you're with us live, or if you're with you watching the replay. We really appreciate you taking the time to kind of feed your career as a writer and learn and grow on that. So we're welcome. Welcome, everybody. Now, today we have a special show. We're going to call it pick the writer's brains. We've had a series of some different questions come up off and on our Facebook page, and if you want to find us on Facebook, you can find us at Writers Chat Members. You can ask to join. You have to fill out a couple questions, and then you could join. And we've been collecting those questions, and we're just going to kind of do a roundtable discussion today, and then we'll invite everybody kind of back in towards the end and see if there's additional questions. So kind of a general discussion today about writing in general. So we put one person in charge, and so she could keep us on task and get into some of these questions and tell us if we're talking too much on that. So we're giving her all the power, and that's Melissa. So we're going to turn it over to Melissa to kind of start us with whatever question she chooses, and we'll see what questions we come up with and what, hopefully, some words of wisdom and encouragement we can share today. So, Melissa, you're in charge.
This is going to be interesting, you guys. Wow. So I guess we'll just get right on it then with the questions. We posed questions to our Facebook group, or posed the opportunity for them to ask questions to pick authors' brains, as you put it, to see what burning questions you have. If you had the chance to ask a professional author anything, what would it be? And so our community just kind of jumped right in there and started throwing them all out there, and some really good questions. So we made a list of them, and I have them here, and we'll try to cover as many of them as we can. And if we have extra time, we can take more questions. I know we've got some already forming in the chat. So I think we decided to kick off with a one tip that you would offer. What is one tip that you would offer authors or writers that you've learned from your experience in writing in general, or in publication? What's one tip that you would give or share with the audience today?
Who goes first? Me?
Go ahead.
I really had to think about this, because it's one of those questions where sometimes if you just it, it's like, well, I don't even know, because there are so many ideas running through your head. But I had to think, okay, if there was one thing, and I think this goes back to when we were talking a couple weeks ago about something, I don't remember now what, and just talking about balance and ebb and flow and all that kind of thing. And maybe this was something we talked about in Writers Chat Fiction too. But I decided, here's my tip: train your gut, trust your gut. And what I mean by that is, primarily for writing fiction, because that's what I do, that you have to both just read a lot about craft and read a lot of books, well-written books in your genre and in other genres, so that you're just kind of by osmosis taking all this stuff in. And then when you're writing your story and you come across different issues, you learn to trust what you have taken in. And you may not be able to put into words or to really understand it right at that moment, but you learn that you have fed your soul all this information and all this good stuff and all these good words, and now you're able to bring that to your own writing. So that's mine. Train your gut, trust your gut. And I usually don't say the word gut, so that's good.
I like that. I personally like it on that way. I guess mine's kind of similar. Well, I got a two-part answer. I would say, know you are a writer, and that means put your butt in the chair and write.
Yeah.
So that writing's still some work, and it's going to take some concentration and some giving up of other things so you can have the block of time to write. And again, and I don't always say but either, and you don't always say gut, so we've got rhyming going here, but I'll say but, chair, and write. And the other one, which is similar to part of your phrase, is that keep learning. You're never going to know everything in this business, so just keep learning. It's lifelong learning as a writer. Things change, but you can always learn more. Butt and gut, Sherry Lynn says, sounds like a workout. Your writer's workout. Butt and gut, butt and gut. All right, so rhyme us next, Jan or Norma or Bethany.
Sorry, I can't rhyme on that one. I started as a children's book writer, and I guess my thing would be just have fun with the first draft. Just let it flow. Then you can go back and work on it. But just as the story's coming to you, as God's guiding you to get it down, just enjoy it. Go for the ride.
Like that.
Norma or Bethany?
Oh, my wheels are turning for something that rhymes with butt and gut, but the things that are coming to mind aren't going to work, so we'll just let it go.
You could go with ride.
Oh, I just thought of one. Don't be afraid to strut.
Oh, good. Good.
You have to have a little bit of self-confidence and be flexible. I came into this a few years ago with this grandiose idea, and it's fiction, and I still am working on that fiction, but God seems to be opening the door to nonfiction. So be flexible and walk through the doors God opens, because maybe it's your training ground and building up your platform or building up your reputation before you launch your baby that you've been working on for many years. So that's my 2 cents.
Very good.
How about you, Bethany? Do you have some thoughts?
Yes. Can it be marketing tips as well? Or other?
Yeah, if it pertains to marketing, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of interest there.
Okay, so the one thing that I have in my mind right now is think of yourself like a media publishing company instead of, oh, I have to get my book out, I have to get my book out. Think of your content in terms of if you and your brand were a media publishing group, and what kind of content would you then share? And so for grad school right now, in this last class on PR campaigns, we had to choose a big brand. I couldn't choose a small one, so I had to choose one that she gave, and so I chose L'Oreal. And I was telling my mom that they are huge. I had this, I don't know, perception of them as like, I don't know, like an older company that wasn't really in touch. But when I actually looked into them, they do their marketing and content like a media group, which is what they are actually. They have that. And so if you go to their blog, they have skincare, hair care, color, all the stuff. And a lot of the content doesn't push back to a product, but it's just valuable information targeted to their base. And so like if we think of ourselves and the content that we're creating as like a group, but as our audience interested under our umbrella, that can take a lot of the pressure off when it comes to what am I going to write about, and then lead into opportunities for freelance writing too, which helps platform. So all kind of like then works together. So that's sort of like where my head's at right now. I wish I had done that at the beginning.
I love that idea, and I'm thinking, and here, Melissa, we always take notes about other ideas for shows sometimes. I think we should make that the umbrella for one of our Writers Chat shows sometimes and just do some brainstorming and do it. Yeah.
I think that would be great, because a lot of times on these shows we get a lot of good information, but I think brainstorming and how-toing together would really help the beginner as well as the novice, or as well as the veteran. Wrong word, sorry.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Would be fun. Great idea. All right.
Okay.
Melissa, you got to answer it.
Oh, I do. Huh? I don't get out of answering the questions, huh? Darn. Okay, so, well, I think that I've answered this question before in a previous open mic. I'm not sure. It seems familiar, but I was tempted to throw in another word that perhaps we don't always use here, and but it doesn't rhyme with butt and gut. I was saying, give yourself permission to write crap.
Yeah, that's good.
Do it out on the digital document. Don't think about it. Just free your mind and let it go and edit later. And you will be amazed at how much more you accomplish when you stop inhibiting yourself as a writer. Just get it out there, and you go back and edit the mess later.
That's good. That segues into what might be your second question too, doesn't it?
Yes, it would. And the second question that we got was, what is your goal for your first draft, your second draft, and so on? Were you wanting me to start that one out?
Well, you've already answered your first draft, so why don't you go ahead and answer your second and third while we're with you, Melissa?
Yeah, mine, when I fleshed it out, when I kind of just spewed my answer out for this one, I was sitting there thinking, that really makes me sound a little haphazard, but there's a lot more to it than what's on the surface. And my answer to it was, for the first draft, dish it out as fast as you and thoroughly as you can. That would be the spewing. Then the second draft, edit the snot out of it. A final draft was refine the snot out of that and pray it's acceptable. And then maybe if there's time, find some beta readers to give me an outside perspective on what I lack, because you're always too close to the project to really see it for everything. So yeah, those are my goals.
How can we follow that?
That's exactly what I was just thinking. How am I going to follow that?
Well, maybe we could just add a few points to that, because I'm just going to comment on the first draft, is that I find that really hard. And sometimes that's when I procrastinate the most, is just to get all the ideas down on the paper, no matter how bad it is. And I sometimes find free writing, just not even paying attention to what, and normally I'm an outliner and I know where I'm going to go with stuff, but just free writing and writing it, sometimes that's where the best stuff comes out of, or new ideas come out of. So that's my little tip on first drafts. But don't procrastinate, get it down, which is what you're saying. Just write it no matter what. And then the editing on that. And the only thing I'll pass on for second and third is something we learned from Robert Benson, and we talked about when he talked a number of years ago now at Florida Christian Writers Conference. We talked about how he thought about the editor's hat and stuff, but he said something in that talk that really stuck with us, is that he copies out whatever he's writing and he actually puts them up on the wall. So it's not just looking at different on a piece of paper, it's looking at different posted upward. So it gives you a whole other different perspective of the words. And I always thought that was a good tip. I have not tried it, but I thought it was a good tip.
I'm not doing that.
Especially if you're having some trouble with it. See it at a different angle. So that's the two things I wanted to share on that. So we'll let someone else go.
That's good.
I think about the same thing that I'm finding on the novel I'm working on right now. I am purposely trying to be just as fast as possible. And I do have an outline and chapter summary for it. But for the first time, usually when I get like about a fourth of the way through or a third of the way through, I start over. And I mean, I've told you guys that before. I've talked about that. And I get about halfway through and I start over. And this time I'm not. I am actually going from beginning to end with this very messy draft and allowing it to be really messy. I am not stopping to write in action beats. I just write action where I know it's going to be and keep on going. And it has helped because I can write. Yesterday I wrote 3,000 words, and believe me, that is phenomenal for me to be able to write that many words in one day. So, you know, it's just kind of, I think this might be the lesson here though, is that there are so many different ways to write. And I used to be somebody, and I still am, like I'm writing a short story also, and I am writing it word by word. And I'm not going to write it fast because it just the way that story is, it just can't be. It's got to be written very deliberately. So just know that there's different ways to do it, and it's going to depend on you. It's going to depend on the story. And you need to try different things with different projects, because if one thing's not working, maybe that's one where you just need to do something else. I think in general, the idea though, to get the draft down and get it down is so important, because otherwise you get bogged down, and especially for newer writers, you get bogged down and you never finish. And you've got to finish that thing, because it's so much easier to revise once you've got something to revise. You can't revise something that's not there. So, to me, there are like 3 major steps to writing. There's the imagining part, the writing part, and the rewriting revision part. And all 3 of those are important. And believe me, I love all 3 of them. But the actual writing part is the one I like the least. For me, it's so much fun to imagine and create those characters and get inside their heads. And it's so much fun to do the revising. But that writing has to be done too. And I like it. I love doing it, but I don't love it as much as the other 2. So, you just got to get it down. Get it down. Get it down. Don't worry about what it looks like.
Definitely. What about the rest of you, the other 3? Any thoughts? Anyone want to chime in?
Well, with the children's books, first of all, have fun. And then I always have to tighten them up, because I've gone too far with my word count. And because it's a lot shorter than most of you guys' books. And I also need to make sure my flow's good, that I didn't jump ahead in one spot, and that I need to pull it back to where, it makes more sense if I shift things around. So it's like I think of something and I got to make sure I get this in, but it's in the wrong spot. So.
Norma?
Well, I'll just say I struggle with so many ideas come and I stop and I restart, and I stop and I restart, instead of just going and getting it all out there and then putting it in the right place. So I agree with what everybody said so far. Just get it out. I think it was Annette posted in the chat that the first draft is, people say just vomit the first one out or something like that is what she said, since we're keeping it real today. And that's true, because otherwise you get bogged down in the restart, and you've got maybe 40,000 words, but none of it's together as a story. So just keep going.
Okay, is it me?
Yes, Bethany.
Okay, I think I write nonfiction, and so the first draft for me is just content, and I write out of order. So it's easy when you have a proposal or the chapter breakdowns, which I recommend for people who are self-publishing as well as traditionally publishing, because it just helps you know like where your pieces are going to go when you're actually doing the writing. And then so once I have all the content in the places where I think it goes on that second draft, and so on, I'm checking for transitions and making sure that there's a balance of a story to pull them in with like the teaching or the narrative, which I call it story versus narrative. It's what I call ping pong nonfiction. Is it going like this? Is there a chapter that's too long? Is there a story that needs to come out as I'm reading through? And I'm also editing in that part too, of things that I hear my mom's voice in my head. Like the words it, what is it? I say that to my kids all the time. They'll say, well, it's over there. What's it? It is no longer a word I like to use in writing if I can help it. So then I started doing some of the editing too, and that just goes on forever. I think I've heard, I can't remember who said it, but someone said that as creatives, like you're never fully finished. And so I don't know that even when the book is turned in, you're ever really done. I think, I know some of you in here, I don't know, for me, books are printed on the page and there's things I wish I could go back and change still. And that at some point I can't go back and read my own stuff anymore, because then it's just painful.
That is so true, though. I agree with that statement, that it's never finished. You just kind of have to decide when to stop.
Yeah.
That's hard.
I like too the focus on that there is a different process with nonfiction and fiction, and oftentimes we we forget about that, and it can kind of change up. Of course, it's different for every person. Nobody does it exactly the same, but yeah, there is a different process to keep in mind too. Okay, so our next question is a little different from this topic. They're talking about in finding an agent, what goes into a good proposal. Okay, so we might need our experienced ones to weigh in on this one. Johnny, do you want to go first?
I'm going to say whatever it says on their website is what goes in the proposal. and that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it to Bethany maybe to if she wants to add anything to that, because she works with different people getting proposals ready. So, but yeah, to me, it's like what they want on their website, that's what you want to give them.
I know at the North Carolina conference, when we had our panel discussion, that's something every single one of them said: follow directions. Go to their website, see what they want, and follow directions to the T.
Yeah.
So just reverberating, instead of using another word, what I heard. It was good advice.
Yeah. Well, Bethany, what other great advice do you have?
White space is really important for a proposal because it needs to be something they can scan. And then at other agent and editor panels at the conferences, I've heard Kyle ask them, where do they start? This agents and editors, where do they start in the proposal? And he makes them raise their hand. Who reads all the way through? Who starts at the overview? Who goes to the chapters? Who looks at the marketing? And it varies, you know, of course, but overwhelmingly every time, typically the editors at a publishing house will go to the writing first, and which makes sense because they're looking for story, and the agents will go to the marketing section, and then they will go to the writing. So it's kind of, and that makes sense in terms of their business too. An agent needs to know, are you marketable? And then can you write? So I think that's interesting. So the marketing section, I would say, follow the guidelines on how you submit it, but the marketing section is going to be in every proposal. It'll vary, determine the weight for fiction or maybe for children's versus nonfiction, which I think is the weightiest of all platforms. Endorsements are good. What's better is if you can say how that person's actually going to help you sell the book. So it doesn't matter if like you're best friends with the president if he's not going to help you. Like, you know, like what's he going to do? Or do you know people in your local area who are contributors to different kinds of magazines? And it all goes back to the part of the platform idea. I know that those are just a couple of things off the top of my head that are important. Comparative titles are very important.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be one of our other questions in the future too. So we'll get back to that one.
Okay, good. We'll stop there.
The only other thing I would add, we're talking about good proposal, right?
Yes.
The only thing I would add is, because I thought the same thing, I've heard the marketing and the good writing is the two key areas, but is to be able to say what your book's about in one sentence, two at the most, you know, be able to really, because that's what I have this one idea right now I'm struggling with because I can't get it. I can't say it, distill it well. I can't even say this well, can I? But anyway, so to be able to really have that hook, that explanation of your book succinctly, I think is important.
I agree. I've got the same thing. It's like that overview section at the top. It's like, if I can't really nail this down here, the rest of the proposal doesn't make any sense.
That's right.
And I think you need to know who your audience is, and get that across to the agent so that they know you know what you're doing, who you're aiming it to.
I agree. I think you need to look for the agent that's right for you. I think that's really important because you want to be a relationship that's going to last for a long time, and so you want to make sure it's going to be a good fit. And their expectations. What are your expectations? What are their expectations? And do they match?
Yeah. You guys covered it all. I can't think of anything more to add to it. Okay, well then we'll just hop on to the next question then. And this is a little bit bigger. This one said, should you self-publish if you believe in a story that hasn't caught a traditional publisher's eye? Many authors I have talked to on Facebook switched to self-publishing because publishers are not doing as much for authors as they used to do in the past for marketing, etc. What are your thoughts there? There's so much to that one, isn't there?
That's loaded.
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
And I have a little bit more to add to that question slightly.
Okay.
I've heard that if you self-publish and you don't do well, that can really hurt you with a traditional publisher. So I think you would have to know that you've got something that's really marketable.
Yeah.
I mean, those of you that are more successful will have to weigh in on that. That's just what I've heard. Everybody's quiet. Come on. All right, Johnny, I'm putting you on this. Oh, Bethany, go ahead.
No, let's put my mom on the spot. That sounds way better to me.
All right, Johnny, you're up.
I did write a little answer down, and my answer
No one
is
can see. Nobody can hear it. It's written in the chat. So I don't have to say it.
I think you can do it if you're going to do it the way a traditional publisher is going to do it. And by that, I mean that you are going to write the very best story you can, not just throw up something onto Amazon, that you're going to have it professionally edited, that you're going to have a professionally designed cover. And so it looks like something that came from a traditional publisher and not some, I don't want to use this in a derogatory way, but a book that looks self-published, because you guys all know there are books that look and you can tell. And there's just these certain little keys, and Bethany can talk about this because I know she's has talked to her sister about this, just certain things that readers expect. And if you don't have those in your book, they might not know what's missing, but they know there's something off, a little off. So, you know, I know this can be a really hard topic because yes, traditional publishers aren't necessarily, you know, you're expected to do a lot of marketing. So if you're going to do it, why not self-publish? And you can make a good career out of self-publishing if you know how to do it right. But you have to do it right, and it means spending some money. And are you going to be willing to do that? So I guess that's my thought on it. I mean, I'm kind of heading down that way. I've joined with a group of women. I think I've talked about this before. Authors, the Mosaic Collection, and we're doing this. We have now released our second book. Mine will be the 10th book that comes out. They're all contemporaries, different genres, but we are sharing the cost of a VA. We are, you know, getting covers that are professionally designed. We have made a commitment that they will be, even if we're not paying to have them edited, we're having them edited by people who know what they're doing, like if we're trading edits. So, you know, these books, the first one that I have came out, and the print copy is absolutely gorgeous. So it looks like it comes from a traditional publisher because we put that kind of care into it. I also think that's a great thing to do, and I think it's a trend. We've talked about this, I think, before too. If you can team up with other authors writing in your same genre, maybe that's something you'd want to do. So yeah, you're going to be putting some money out there, hopefully. Fingers crossed, God blessing, we'll get that money back and more. I mean, that's the idea, but, you know.
And I think about Norma's question about, does it hurt you in the long run if it didn't sell much? And I think part of it is, was it done like what Johnny said? Did it look amateurish, self-published? And that's what hurt you, and it was poor writing. Yeah, that could hurt you career-wise. But if it's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of books. So if it didn't sell a lot because you are a single self-publisher and don't have quite the marketing and the getting out there, and that's why it didn't sell well, then that's a total other different story. It could convince somebody, an agent or an editor might see it on a book table at a book conference and really be impressed with it. So I think it could go both ways.
Yeah.
Good writing is still good writing.
Right. Yeah, I agree. You do, Johnny, need a whole team to put it together the right way. And if you do have your whole team, you could self-publish and do really, really well. But you have to put in the hard work to get there. It doesn't just drop in your lap. And I know being part of authors community has really opened my eyes to so many more things that are helping authors. And I kind of feel like God's dropped me into this to be there as a support to other authors trying to get out there, that most of our authors have no idea what they're doing. And we're training them to, okay, this video will help you with this one will help you with that. And I'm starting to make videos on how to use Canva, how to launch a book. So, I mean, it's unbelievable how much work is out there to make your book a success. It was like, it's just amazing.
It's a lot of work.
Why did you say, Jan? Say author community. It's
authorscommunity.net.
.net.
Mm-hmm.
So it's on the recording in case someone else was interested in that.
And then we also have ebookchristian.com, where you can go, and for $45 for a year, you can advertise your book. So it's, a big help. You don't spend a ton of money, but it gets out to a very large audience.
So, yeah, I have those in the chat, so they're there as well.
Yeah.
Bethany, did you have any thoughts before we move on to the next question?
I have lots of thoughts.
She's chomping at the bit.
Let her go. Turn her loose.
So I think someone said this in the chat, and I think it's important to say. I think authors prematurely self-publish as well. They get some rejections, and they say, I'm going to say this on the record. I think self-publishing can be done very, very well. And for some of our clients at Platlit, it is the route to go. And we say, listen, don't waste time trying to get a publisher for this, because you have the platform, you're speaking, especially if they're nonfiction, which is where we specialize. Like, you can make a lot more money and control the business a lot better as a self-published author. And then we tell them like where to go to get excellent cover design, the editing, make sure the paper quality is good, all the things that my mom was saying that a book needs, to get someone to help them do that. But so here is what I'm going to say on record. I think people use the publishers don't do a lot for me. If I have to do all the marketing, why don't I self-publish, as a cop-out? Because you're probably not going to do the marketing, first of all. And secondly, a publisher adds a ton to the marketing side that I would never be able to do. Like, when we sit down with our marketing meetings, they have an allocation of budget that's probably bigger than my entire budget, even though I'm putting money and investing in a traditionally published book as well on marketing. They've got contacts that they've been using for other publishers, like with other authors. They've got a reach that I don't have. They can get you into these events. They get you into the distribution, and it's very hard when you're self-published to do that. But this is not just a pro-traditional. I'm just saying, like, I think a lot of people give up because they will have to do the marketing anyway. Why don't I just self-publish? But you're not willing to do actually all the other things the publisher was going to do. And I feel like they give up too soon. Like, I really think it's a question you have to ask yourself, like, how much am I willing to spend? How much am I willing to invest? And how much am I actually willing to market before I go that route? Because if your dream is to ever get a traditionally published book, that ISBN number counts for you. And it either proves really that you can market yourself or you can't. And so I think people give up too soon, honestly. Like, their dream is to get traditional. Not saying one is better or worse. I'm just saying you really have to know what you're getting into for both.
Yeah, and oftentimes there's a misconception about it too. The ease of it or the lack of ease. A lot of people think it is easier than what it is. And then when they get to looking into self-publishing, it's like, whoa, reality hits. And they don't realize, I actually don't have the means to make this happen. So yeah, a lot of good thoughts there. So our next question, going back probably to more traditional publishing side of things, but it still can pertain to self-publishing too, is what is the best way to approach potential influencers for your book? This is kind of more on the marketing side, so maybe we got to throw this down to you first, Bethany. Do you have any thoughts on potential influencers and approaching them?
So I do come from a nonfiction background, so that's what I can talk to, because I'm sure it's different for like novels and things. So, and probably for children's too. But I think that you have to know the people inside of your space, and the way you interact with them sets you up as a fan or a friend. I call it fan versus friend. Do I want to be their friend or do I want to be their fan? And you have to pick, because the way you respond to them in comments or the way that you reach out to them will put you in one of those camps. And if it's somebody that like you truly like, they're in your space, you want to work with them to get the same message out, then you want to position yourself more professionally. You want to build a relationship before there's ever an ask to be an influencer. Some people, though, that are really big, you're going to fangirl them. Like they're not going to be your friend. It's going to be really hard to get into that circle. They're already wary because they have so many people asking for things. And Instagram influencers are a good way to do this. But this is where marketing dollars come in. If you're going after a big name that they get approached all the time, their endorsement costs something. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you're going to have to say, how much would it take to get you to hold my book on your Instagram to your 87 million followers? Like, you need to know numbers. And so you have to go at it more professionally that way. But you still want to build the relationship. But if you're looking for people who are at your level, or even maybe 5,000 to 10,000 followers above, that's the kind of range I kind of look for, because you're still within the same sphere of influence-ish when they look at your numbers. That would be the one I would try to really build a relationship, a long-term relationship with them. If they were way bigger than that, I would probably just go a business deal. This is what I'm looking for. What are your rates to do this kind of thing? That's just it. That was just off the top of my head after not listening to anyone else talk about that. That was more Instagram influencer marketing. There's other ways to do it for other things. But I'll cede the floor.
Wow.
Mom?
Well, I was just going to add similar to that influencers get to know them first before you ask. Good Lord, they get asked all the time, and do something for them.
Mm-hmm.
Post review for them. Say, be helpful in the conversations on their Facebook page. Do something for them. Offer them something. They get to know you. They'll start noticing who's commenting on their blog posts, or who's sharing something that they've shared. They'll notice that after a while. Then they'll start recognizing your name, and then you build that relationship on that. And it's something we could do now. We don't have to wait till we have a contract. We could start, like you said, identifying who's in that space that you might possibly want to, and start building that relationship now. And I would say, take the risk. I'm not one who likes to ask, but so I would say get the courage to take the risk sometime, to get to know some of a name, someone that you might think might be a good influencer for you.
It's never too early to start making friends in the area that you're writing. And as you write, drop little hints of what's going on in your book, and that'll help draw more in and build your platform, and you'll get to know people better and let them help you with you're struggling in a scene in a book. Ask them to give you some ideas. Maybe offer a prize for the one that you pick. That really gets them to want to work with you.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, Bethany's back.
So one of the things we did for our books was we identified people we wanted to talk about for different chapters. And so we didn't know if they were going to make it into the final draft of the book or not, but those are people we can reach out to after the writing of it and say, listen, we love you so much. We featured something, that you did. That's just a big give if they're going to be in a book that's coming out. And it's just, can I send you a copy of the book? Then there's no quid pro quo. You just did something nice, like Jean said. But that if you're featured in someone's book, the likelihood of you getting that copy and not sharing it is low, right? So you're kind of that. So I think for going back to nonfiction, if you can think of people who are influencers in that space or that chapter, by adding them in there and sending them a copy for free, that is a way to give to them, and then whatever happens, it happens. It's kind of a nice thing too.
I just have one thing to add then, as far as asking for influencers for a novel or endorsements, either one. I guess I kind of took that as what the question might have meant. But make sure that you're asking people that are writing in the same genre you are. I mean, I get asked sometimes to write endorsements for books that are not contemporaries and are not historicals, and it's like, and I'll try to explain that, you know, my name's not going to mean anything on that, because I know, but I don't write that. And yet sometimes you still feel pressured to go ahead and write the endorsement anyway. And also know that if somebody tells you no, it's like I had to tell someone no not too long ago because I absolutely was just so slammed. I did not have time to read her book. And I felt really bad about it. But it had no reflection on her story. In fact, I think she's an absolutely wonderful writer. I've read her first novel. It was great. I wish I could have written an endorsement for it too, but I truly, honestly did not have the moments to read that story and write a decent endorsement. So, you know, don't take a no as, excuse me, as being just, try not to take it personally. It's hard not to take it personally, I know, because I've been there, but, you know, try not to take it personally. If they tell you it's because they don't have the time, they probably truly do not. So, you know, it doesn't mean you can't ask that same person again at a later date or for another project. But again, do choose people who are writing in your genre. That's who counts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like what Rhonda said in the chat was, don't ask somebody that you're not following.
Exactly.
And I think that was really good advice, Rhonda, because if you're not following them, like it's already been mentioned, especially if it's somebody that's predominant, they get requests all the time. And if they don't know you, have never seen your name, they're not going probably to accept. The other thing I heard, and I don't remember if it was at one of the conferences or from the Jerry Jenkins Writer Guild I used to be a part of, and that was when you send out your request, whether they say yes or no, send them a thank you.
Yeah.
And if at all possible, a handwritten thank you, even if it's just to their PO box. A handwritten note makes such a big impression, more than just a comment, oh, thanks for considering me. I mean, that's better than nothing, but a handwritten note, because people just don't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And it really does make a big impression.
So our next question is a little more light and easier to go. We'll jump back to the technical questions after this one. But our sixth question was, what's one thing that you wish you'd done differently on your writing journey, and what's something that you feel you did right? Ooh. Who wants to take this one first?
I will.
Okay, Jen.
I didn't do much research. I just went with the first publisher I found, and I paid $10,000 for my first 2,000 books, my first printing.
Wow.
So I had no idea. I didn't know. I thought that's what everybody did. So I highly suggest you do a little bit more research and don't spend so much.
And what's one thing that you feel you did right?
Becoming a partner with Authors Community and eBook Christian. I have learned so much since I joined up with them, and just want to share it with everybody else out there that it's so much easier if you have a good team behind you.
Awesome. Yeah.
I know a lot of things I did wrong. I'm gonna split mine up. I'll say something I did wrong, but I have to think about the one I want to answer for doing right. So I think I always go back to when that first book released, I had like a platform of 10 people. So I know before the call we were talking about encouragement when we don't have the 50,000 word platform. And I guess I'm just saying, like, I'm proof that it can happen. It's just hard on the back end because you haven't built anybody who knows you. So you really have to count on people who influencers, and that could include pastors or, churches and things like that. But what I didn't do right after that first book is I didn't have a proposal ready at the end of it so that the second book was coming out. There was too much of a gap between book 1 and book 2. And so I lost momentum. I didn't have an email list. I was learning, and I just lost everybody from that first book. I have no idea who they are. And so that's harder than going into the second book. It's backtracking. And that's why like marketing is I think it's why I love it so much. I've just seen it the hard way. Like just do it on the front end. It's so much easier when you do that. So I wish if I could go back, I would have had a second proposal working on it when they were working on the book at publication at the house. I would have been working on the proposal at that time. So I would have that second one in the works and ready.
Good answer.
I have to think about the right. so it's off of me now.
Well, I'll say one thing I think I did right, and maybe this will help you
Okay.
think about it, is I heard from the very first conference, this is a business. No, it's a business. Treat it like a business, both from your end and get to know the business. That it's a relatively small, especially within the Christian publishers business. So don't burn bridges.
Yeah.
And you smile even when you're being rejected type thing, but know it is a business. It's a business on their side, and it could be the greatest idea, but if it's not going to sell books, they're not going to publish it. Did right was to learn to listen to them all the way through. That when they say this is one reason why it's not working, well, pay attention and learn from that. Listen. That would be one thing I did right. What I did wrong is I should have produced more, and I'm going to fly in the face of what Bethany said, and maybe worry less about marketing at first. I got so worried about building this number and building this platform when I could have been producing maybe a newsletter article or an article in a magazine or getting guest posts and producing that would have built the platform, so I think maybe change the perspective of that. I got worried about building all these numbers on Facebook instead of producing.
I love that you said that because everyone goes after the number, but it's the content. It's like if we're producing the content, eventually the followers get there. And I'll give you an example real quick. I'm hijacking for a second. But on Twitter, you can pin a tweet. And it had like 2 shares, 2 likes, retweets or whatever. And I'm like, I hated that it was there, but I've left it there for like 3 years. And now it has a lot. And I'm never changing it. I always go back to that. And I think that's the power of time. And it's the power of just giving yourself a break because I hated the small numbers for a really long time, but now it's growing because of the time. And we have to be patient. And so I love what you said. It's the producing that turns those numbers instead of trying to go after the number and not producing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want immediate, and this is, the question is what we wish we did differently at the beginning. And I think some of it is just, it's a process, and it's going to take time, and just put one foot against the head of the other and don't give up. It'll get there.
I love that patience.
Any other thoughts?
One thing I did right, I think, and not to get super spiritual, but this is true, is that I prayed. And this really helped with rejections because I prayed all along for the right agent and for the right publisher. And then when agents would say no or publishers would say no, it was like, well, that's okay because they're just not the right ones. And not that it didn't still hurt. And in fact, a couple of them hurt really badly because it was like, oh, I really thought this was going to work this time. But I never fell apart. I mean, it wasn't like just this is the end of the world kind of thing. It was just like, no, God's got this and I'm praying for the right one, not just anyone. So, I feel like those prayers were really answered. And even still, I mean, it almost then was like a training ground because even now when things are no, I kind of know that means, oh, because it's a no, because there's something better coming along. And if I was tied up with this, then I might not be able to do this other thing. So, just make sure you are praying about it. Just just pray about your projects, pray about your influence, pray about, if you're wanting an agent or wherever you are in this journey, make sure that you're that you're praying about it, you're giving it to God, because it's all Him. What I did wrong is what I did wrong, not at the beginning of my journey, but when my first novel was published, I thought I was such a terrific writer and I really wouldn't have to do much. And God was just going to make this novel a bestseller. And you know what? No, I had to learn a little bit of humility there, and I still think it's a great novel, but I didn't do, and I didn't know. I mean, there was ignorance there. There was situations there. It was kind of during a really difficult time in my life when this novel came out. So there was a lot just going on, but I just didn't know what I needed to be doing, and I wasn't doing what I needed to be doing. And actually, even if I had known, I'm not sure I would have been able to do what needed to be doing, just because of other life circumstances. So, there's just some things we can't control. Give it time.
But
I know one thing I did right was to join Writers Chat.
Yay!
And have encouraged me, and I've grown so much. Like, seriously, I really have. And what I did wrong was, in the beginning, I was very nervous and prayed, and that's not necessarily wrong. But then I won a contest, and I thought I was good, and God should just take all of my work, until He reminded me, you got to do the work if you want the reward. And so that's what I did wrong. I was wanting the reward and the kudos, but I wasn't willing to sit down and read the books, learn the craft. And so, but anyway, so that's my input. That's my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm. Well, mine kind of is a lot similar along the lines, but a little different too. I just think that what I did wrong was let fear govern me too much in my writing and my approaching and networking with people. I let fear hold me back way too often. And I think that if I pushed past the fear, I probably would have made a lot of great connections earlier and would have saved me a lot of stress in the long run and those long years of silence. But what I did right, I think, was I learned persistence and to keep at it, no matter how bleak everything looks, just to keep going, keep trying, believe in what you have, what God's given you to write and your message, and to just keep pursuing. So I'd say that's my 2 cents.
Good.
I don't want to. I figured out my right thing, but if someone hasn't gone yet, I don't want to take their time.
I think everybody has. So go ahead.
I was thinking about it. I think the thing that I did right was I invested my time in people and platforms that were new. And so, like, personality-wise, like, I'm never the first adopter. I'm always like, I wait and see how things go before I jump in. I'm always like towards the end of the rush. And that when Periscope came out, like, years ago before Facebook Live was a thing, that was the first thing in my life probably that I've ever jumped on and just figured this was a time to learn it. And I spent a lot of time there. But that time built some very deep relationships with people that, two of which we met at the Nashville conference. They came to that we put on, and I got to hug them in person. We've been friends for maybe 5 or 6 years now, but it was through Facebook, but it was also through Periscope. And so the lesson I think from that is not being afraid to try something new and investing the time, but also because live streaming was sort of like coming out at that time, that caught the attention of people at writers conferences. And that's what got me in the door to start speaking, because nobody was teaching on it within the ones I was, but I was doing it. And so it goes back to what Jean said. If you're producing, then you have something to stand on, and then you can talk about it. And that actually was one of my gateway entries that changed everything kind of for me. But I didn't know it at the time, when I was spending time on Periscope. And a lot of people criticized that too. Like, that's stupid. But I learned a lot from that. That's probably one of the biggest lessons, was that time on that platform changed everything. So I think don't be afraid to do that.
And I just want to kind of piggyback on that, because it was because of Bethany being on Periscope, and I got on Periscope, Jeannie got on Periscope, and then Jeannie and I we're talking about what can we do together And Blab came out, and that started Writers Chat, Bethany and Jeannie and I. So it's like, we're going to do this on Blab. We're going to do this. Well, then, of course, as some of you know, Blab sort of just disappeared overnight, and we were at a loss.
Change their stuff out.
Yeah, and we just hung in there. We did Google, I mean, and nothing was really working. And then someone suggested Zoom, and we've been on Zoom for probably 2 or 3 years now. But it all goes back. I mean, if you just trace it back, it really goes back to Periscope being, if it hadn't been for that, I don't know that we would be here today, you know, with Bethany's interest in that. So, you know, there you go.
It shows to take the risk sometimes, even if it looks initially like it isn't going to work or it falls apart, because you never know if that's not the stepping stone that might lead to something even better. You know, so that's what it's what you got to keep going. It is almost noon. I don't know if anybody else noticed the time. We've got a couple other questions we can get to, so this tells us we could do this again.
Yeah, because we have questions in the chat too that we never, I mean, haven't even
Never got to and all that. So I don't know whether we want to do one more question or do we want to invite people on. What do you guys think?
I'm open to what you guys think.
What time is it?
We could save our questions that we have saved and for a future open mic.
Why don't we do that? We'll do that in that way. Let's, while the recording's still going, is Bethany, do you want to tell us about next week? Because I think you're in charge of next week, because if I remember right, Johnny and I are both gone.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Oh, no.
I'm in the Caribbean.
Actually, I think Sherry Lynn is our next guest for next week, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, I am.
Yes. Our next guest.
Oh, I'm going to miss you guys. Can I come to the Caribbean and postpone my...
No, you know what? I'm off a week. I've got one more week. I'm here next week. So the following week I'm not. Okay. So I'm here.
We're going to talk about writing. I mean, listening. Sorry. Will you tell them, Melissa?
We're talking about the art of listening for writers.
Both listening for writing and healing listening as well, because a good listener can establish and heal relationships.
Yes, all the
just by being a good listener. I actually almost lost my boss $30,000 because I did not listen right. I lost my job and I lost a good boss because I was not listening. So if you want to hear that story, tune in next week.
All right. That sounds like a great topic. And like I even made the comment when we were talking about the questions that listening was one of the things I thought I did right earlier on, you know, because you got to listen too. So it helped us as writers in a number of ways. So I look forward to that. And yes, I am here next week. It'll be the week after. I'm in the
Same here. I'll be here next week, but I won't be here the week
after.
The 2 weeks, actually.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody. Thank you guys for participating today and sharing your wisdom and brains and experience with us. And we hope those of you that are watching this either on the replay or in the chat got something out of it, and hopefully some encouragement and some words of wisdom and some new ideas. I know there was several ideas I jotted down listening to you guys. So each time, like I said, it's a continuing process of learning and growing. Anything in closure for any of our buddies online to say?
I just want to thank everybody. Bethany, you are a wealth of information. Thank you.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Bethany?
We did a Labor Day sale that ends today. So like the whole academy is 20% off. I think the code's Labor Day 20. So we don't go on sale often. We're kind of like figuring out which dates we're gonna. So like this is a good time to get some classes.
Okay. Till what, about midnight tonight or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds great. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. We're going to talk about the art of listening for the writer. So see you next week, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.